Well, welcome to Native Wellness Institute's Power Hour. We want to say thank you. We want to say we give tremendous gratitude for you listening to this Power Hour ever since March 2020. Nistu Nidaniko Makoyo Sequoia. It means Milky Way. It means the Wolf's Trail. It's my second Blackfoot name. I'm coming to you with my longtime colleague of our team. Would like to, as always, give you a Native man's perspective and a Native woman's perspective. So I'm just going to frame. We thought, oh my gosh, there is just so much shock. There's so many tears. There's so much agony in all of our grandmothers and our mothers and our sisters and our daughters' hearts right now by what our country has done to us again as women with Roe versus Wade. It is so incredibly painful. It just hurts us so bad that it can be overwhelming. And these tears, I'm talking through the tears because Native people and Native Wellness Institute, we understand that we have to heal the healers. And that includes Natives, that includes our white senators, that includes our white congressmen, that includes our white presidents, that includes our whites, mostly white thinking Supreme Court. So, yeah, I was thinking, oh yeah, but there's one, they used to call them Oreos. They were black on the outside, but white on the inside. And then they used to call, if they were Asian, bananas. They were yellow on the outside and white on the inside. And they used to call it in Native American country, apples. They were red Indian on the outside, but they operated like a white person. And I apologize. I don't want to be name calling, but Jean and I, we thought we would just come on because we know how you're feeling. Because we know that just hearing this decision to outlaw abortions across the 50 United States and to close clinics where poverty-stricken people who are reservations where they don't even have vehicles cannot get proper health care and not be seen in a women's clinic, not be seen by individuals. And so we wanted to come on to say, what do we do? What do we do now? And so I'm part of the team. I'm with Native Wellness Institute. Our executive director is Jalene Joseph, and Shannon is, bringing us to you today. She's been our staff for over a couple decades, going on the third decade. So I'd like you to meet Jean. Jean, you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah. Hey, it's always good to be on here with you, Theta, and be on here with the Native Wellness Power Hour, just to discuss, what's going on in Indian country, and sometimes we're discussing like some really lighthearted things, some celebrations, ceremonial things on there and on here. But we are here. My name's Gene Tagaban. My Shinket name is Gayel. I'm of the Duckdane Ton clan, the Raven Freshwater Sockeye clan from Hoona, Alaska, the child of a Wishkatan Eagle Shark clan from Juan in Juneau, Alaska. I'm Cherokee Trinket in Filipino. My relatives, family, honorable people. I just wanted to introduce myself, and it's just good to be here, because part of this too, we're talking about the genocide of our people, and so to acknowledge who I am, my ancestors, and and what we've gone through as indigenous peoples, and here we go again. And this reversal of the Roe v. Wade, I mean, there's an emotion. I mean, I get emotional with this right now. I mean, there's an emptiness right in my chest, in the pit of my chest right now, thinking about this. And again, the patriarchy, what the patriarchy is doing, and want to this control and of women, and the objectification of women, in this country. And again, with this constitution that we have that's written for this nation, this country, women are not even acknowledged in or voiced in the constitution. There's no she, there's no her, there's no none of that there in the constitution. It's the rich white patriarchy again, and of what's going on, and it's affecting us all, and I'm kind of speechless, and I was talking with Theta too about part of it, being a man, being that, that male, part of it too. We have these when we have gatherings with the Native Waters Institute, we have these gatherings where the men approach the women and there's an apology and asking of forgiveness for the atrocities that men have done to the women, and here it is again. Here it is again, the atrocities of what's going on, and of what's going, and I'm just taking the voice of men, in this. And I just have to say, is like when I heard the news, I was on my way to a Native community to work with a group of youth, young people. And I was driving and I actually passed up my exit because I was just overwhelmed. And I drove like 45 minutes out of my way before I finally realized I'm totally going the wrong direction. I had to get there. So to get to my destination, I was about 35, 40 minutes late to get there where I wanted to get there, just because I was just so overwhelmed. And then when I sat in a circle with our relatives, and it's interesting, all the young men were sitting on one side and all the women were sitting on the other side. It was just, I was honest with them about, my concern for the safety and the health of our young women.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as men, our responsibility in that.
Mm-hmm. Gene, no, thank you, because I think right now it's very important that we all listen to each other's emotions and reaction, and that it brings our people together, even our men and our women, our LGBTQ, transgender, and two-spirit, that we all come together, because it is a time to, first of all, not suffer in isolation. We with this pandemic, we have learned, that's why we're doing this power hour, and why we're doing this Zoom. We're inviting you to ally and to share your experience. Just this past week, I've just gotten so many phone calls, messages on Facebook, texts, and just overwhelming in social media, people just calling and saying that they were just so overwhelmed with all the emotion of shock, like having grief around how could this happen, feeling depressed. And then something else started, and it's a good thing, is I started to get a lot of Native women started to tell me their story about why they chose to have an abortion. And why that was such an excruciating, usually, and I know for myself, I was so young that that decision was so excruciating to make. They had to make a choice, and sometimes that choice elevated their lives to go on to go to college, to go on to have a career, or to go on to where they could just be independent and raise a child. So they a lot of it has to do with the framework of income. And then it was just that they did not, the father wasn't going to be there. So it was like they did not want to be a single parent. And so there was that just that so one of the healing things that I think we could encourage all of our audiences: listen to your grandmothers of when they made a choice to have or to not have a child. Listen to your mothers when they made a choice and how it influenced their lives. Because I think right now we have to listen to not only young girls, because just like you said with your youth group that you were meeting, I was meeting with 9th, 11th, and 12th graders, and they were irate. They were all native, mixed, boys and girls. They were Salish Kootenai, and they were just saying, "That's not right." I mean, like they didn't like make it up. They just said, "That's not right," and that's not right. And then they went into action. They said, we should get a t-shirt. We should get a pin. We should get, Indians, we got to get a t-shirt. We got to have a raffle. They just said, we just have to start saying that we think that was human injustice. And that was actually one of the terms. And so I started thinking, wow, this is a human rights issue. Because my Canadian friends, I'm at a EME encampment. It's the 3rd annual. There's 76 tribes with herds of buffalo. And one of the Indian women, just less than a half hour ago, she goes, we are so sorry for the United States with this Roe versus Wade reversal. We wanted to come down and make sure, we wanted to talk to the Indian women here just to see if you were okay. So, like we're like, okay, internationally, Indigenous coming to see if we're okay. And we said, yeah, we're okay because we have some buffalo. No. We're like, yeah, we're okay. You're here. Yeah, we're okay. We just that sisterhood and that camaraderie. But at the same time, our men are soothing us. In all these stories, a lot of our Indian men and a lot of our partners to Indian women, they're actually taking time to soothe the women through the emotion before we all jump into action. And so Jean and I were talking earlier, and I was just thinking, in my mind, I was celebrating, in Oklahoma right now. And this is like a coup for Indian women. In Oklahoma now, they can persecute non-natives on Indian land. That's the other good thing. The Supreme Court. So if the Supreme Court, we're not questioning that. We're just saying you might make 9 good decisions and you might make 1 awful. And what we have to let them know is you made 1 awful decision and we want to turn it around. We know in November, this has got to be put on the ballot. If it goes to each state, we're asking each of you, we want to hear your stories, do the healing and wipe your tears and get into action and see what you can do in your state to make sure that this doesn't abuse a young teenage girl, that this doesn't abuse a single mother, that this doesn't abuse just a woman. And just because she, as a woman, as an entity, as a sovereign, her body is sovereign. That's sovereignty. That is the bottom line of sovereignty. As a sovereign body, that woman gets to decide what happens to her sovereign body. And it just needs to be that simple. Just as with our men, the men, that's their sovereign body. I just say, God, what if we could take Congress and give them all vasectomies? I mean, I'm gonna pass a law. I'm gonna give you all vasectomies. I mean, that's how ludicrous in a human. We can reverse it, right? So, what are you thinking, Gene? I
You
don't
know
want
what?
to. Yeah.
No. I hear you, Theta. And I'm thinking is, part of the reason I got into this work on advocacy to stop the violence and the assault against women, LGBTQ relatives, is because I heard this. I heard this thing about the greatest threat of harm, hurt, assault, and violence against women. The greatest factor is men, men, and that really hurt me when I heard that. The greatest threat to the health and wellness, of women are men. And so it's like, so how can we get men involved in this? And Tony Porter, who works with a Call to Men, an organization works with men, nationally and internationally. He's a black-bodied man, and he put a statement out there: taking away the woman's right to choose is a form of violence. Mm. Taking away the woman's right to choose is a form of violence. Thinking that men, again, the patriarchy, as men, has this right to make decisions, and how women treat their bodies, and I just want to say this too, is like right now, I'm finding the words and the way to express this, because I am overwhelmed, and I am trying to find my place in how to express and talk about this, but I'm here willing to stumble. I'm here willing to just make some mistakes and as I learn how to do this, because it needs to be talked about. It needs to be discussed. And men, we need to come together and find a way that what can we do to support our sisters, our relatives, our grandmas, like you said, just to take that list. How can we build our allyship? How can we build our allyship here for this? And finding a way in your community, in your home, in your house, in the res, on the village, wherever that is, and finding that, how can we be those allies? And so I'm here, I'm trying to find these words, I'm trying to find a way to express it. The more I talk about it, the better it gets, the more I can do this, and I've called some brothers, and I've called them up and said, hey, what are your thoughts on this? Do we want to, how are we going to approach this? And what are we going to do? And I've even questioned, like, hey, what's so-and-so? How do they feel about it? We've known them for years. How do they feel about it? I don't know. We better ask them. And just putting it out there. We got to talk about it, ask it, and get it out there. And like you said, we got to get it on the ballot, and we got to vote. I mean, I know my wife is listening to this right now, and she would, that's a huge thing. Just we got, and she would want me to say this as well. We've got to get out there and let our voice be heard. Vote. We have the saying, we got to let our voice be heard on our grandfather's land, our indigenous lands here. We do. And we got to, and part of letting and having our voice heard is we've got to get out there and vote and come together, in this system here.
And Gene, I think helping all of us get back to our basic indigenous knowledge about the sacredness of life givers.
the the sacredness of, in our languages, and even I was thinking about that proverb from Northern Cheyenne that says, you are not defeated until the hearts of your women are on the ground. And so this is not, we're not defeated, but our women's hearts have been hurt. Our emotional um, hygiene, our emotional, spiritual hygiene has taken a hard hit. And so maybe if I just say some things, and then you can say it from a man's perspective. I think we have to start with our daughters, because the daughters, the young daughters in the United States and the young daughters across the world, we have to start with them, and just that how sacred their life-giving capabilities are, and that sacredness is their choice, their family's choice is in that arena. And so I'm thinking about the a lot of the moon ceremonies, the right now, as our universe, we just had a solstice. We're into springtime. We're into it's renewal time. It's into all the ceremonies here are revere the sacred woman. We have a sacred vow woman in the Okan. We have sacred bundle holder women. That there's right now. There's right. I'm with a lot of holy people and a lot of worldwide people who believe that the human beings and the wild animals and the animals and the earth and the universe and the sun are all connected. And so I just think, because, Gene, think about it, like, okay, like in the old days, they used to say, oh, that woman's on the rag. Because there was no Kotex, there was no tampons, and it was, there was that, and then there was, those types of saying. And when you're a little girl and you haven't even started your menstrual cycle, so that stuff has to be explained, like how beautiful your body works, how beautiful the rites of passage that you turn from little girl to become a woman, and that part of, and when a woman's hurt, when a little girl is hurt, we were taught our men were supposed to protect us. We were taught that our men were supposed to nurture us. We were taught, and so I think, so I just want to say, and that sacredness of being a life giver and making choice, because we have to, as a young girl, and I'll just, on a personal note, even before we had talked about stories of going to Planned Parenthood and being virgins and getting on birth control for choice. But there was several points in my life where I had to choose, and it was because of healing, because my family had done enough healing that they wanted to make sure that my partner that was going to make a baby with me also had done enough healing, that their healing time was sacred. So I think when you think about two coming together, it's got to be two people working on their healing. And so there were several points with my girlfriends and with my cousins and with myself where they would say things like, I don't think that's a good choice if you choose him. He looks like he's still pretty wounded. And they were being nice, like, he's pretty wounded. Do you want a wounded warrior taking care of you and your children? No, you want a healed wound warrior. I mean, so the sacredness is not only in this decision around an abortion, it's a sacredness that is lifelong. And that's why we need our language and our ceremonies. And we need our grandmother's advice. We need our mother's advice as well as our grandpa's, but they have to guide us into that womanhood so that we make better choices. And so I'll just say that much. So what do you think about that, Gene?
I mean, I like that as you know, again, the sacredness, you know, the sacredness of our, you know, and start with the young ones and teaching about that sacredness. I want to go back a little bit to it, and our men's responsibility in, because my experience too, I did go through that experience of having an abortion with a partner, and part of the decision on that was, I knew I wasn't going to be around. That's when I was traveling like 250 days out of the year. I was never around, wasn't going to be home, wasn't going to be present. Our relationship was in, you know, trauma, turmoil, because we like you said, we're two traumatic, hurt souls who came together, and we were not ready to bring a child into this, on this earth, you know, and having that responsibility to do that. And again, my thing too is I say, how can I do this when I'm not going to be around? And I knew that in my work, in the nature of my work, you know, I'm not going to be around. I mean, it's like, and so that was that choice that we made, you know, and it's a big choice, you know. And from there, I'll tell you, from that point on, though, I told myself, I'm not going to let that happen again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to let that happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And so, men, we have got to take a responsibility here, if that's your choice. And also, if you bring a child into the world, you know, it's like there's so many single mothers out there, you know, and my hands go up to the mothers, single mothers who are just take, you know, and where are the dads? You just can't go out there. I mean, it's like, and the vasectomy to everybody in Congress. I mean, it's like kind of like just boom out there, but you know, and but the thing is, a women can, you know, conceive and have a child like once a year. Men can go out there and just start throwing their sperm all over the place and have children like several times a day, 365 days out of the year.
No wonder that's what happened.
I mean, it's like, yeah, and it's like all they're just like tossing sperm all over the place, you know, like you know, and just hump in the air if they want to. I mean, it's like but you know, I don't know. I'm just like throwing
No,
stuff out there,
but see,
but
Gene, but think about that, Gene, because you know, as the sons or the young men that I've raised, I've always tried to tell them their sperm is sacred.
Yeah.
And that you just don't go squirting it around everywhere, that it's a sacred ceremony when you choose that woman that might become, you know, your forever partner, that, you know, that decision. And that's why, I mean, that's why there's contraceptives. I mean, that's why there's
yeah, I mean, it's you know, I'm not trying to like to be gross or disgusted or anything, but it is. I mean, it is that sacredness of just, you know, just can't start throwing it around. I mean, it's just that there's that sacred act,
yeah,
and that the act of getting together with another loved one. You know, it's a ceremony. You know, I mean, that, you know, and so it's like, you know, but it's again, it's like, man, we've got to step up. Fatherhood is sacred. You know, those father, you know, the sacredness of fatherhood. You know, there's all those single fathers out there too. I want to acknowledge as well. I mean, but it's like, man, we have to step up those men who are being the single fathers and who have stepped up and gotten involved. Thank you, but we need more.
Mhm.
We need more. We need men to like come together, and we need men to like have this conversation together like this, like we're having right now,
Mhm. Mhm.
and having the hard conversations. And if you don't know where to start, you got to just start and find out, and just like and just start having the conversation. And then that way we start to have learning how to have the conversation with our young ones,
Mhm. Mhm.
the young boys, the
Mhm.
teenagers, those coming into puberty. My father never had that conversation with me
Mhm. Mhm.
or my uncles, and and so it's how can we have those conversations, and again this this toxic masculinity
Ah. Uh-huh.
that is so out there in society, and the collective socialization of men. How are we going to, that make healthy men and aware men,
Mhm.
and present men, as
Mhm.
opposed to that masculine, that toxic masculinity and promotion of the patriarchy, and so I mean I'm learning this too.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I'm an older man now, and I'm learning this too. And
Mhm.
so I know we've done that talk on healthy sexuality to theater too, and there's a lot of men we don't know how to talk about emotions, about feeling, deep feeling, and those things, because it's my father told me when I was a kid, like, men don't cry, and we're still growing up with that. Men don't,
Mhm.
and so it's like, in order, men, it's about control. And
Yeah.
it's going all the way to the top again, that toxic masculinity, the patriarchy, that collective socialization, the objectification of women, making the decisions for women, seeing women as property, and
Mhm.
and that control that's there,
Mhm.
and that's all fear-based.
Yes. Yes. And so no, thank you, Gene, because just as it's good to hear your voice and to say toxic masculinity, and that needs to be changed. And it's good to hear you say, just because you're saying that comforts me, it calms me. And so I think, with this Roe versus Wade, we have to give ourselves some grieving time, because like those of us are just in the pandemic, still just working on our healing and grief and loss, and now being able to come, into summertime. I was just noticing how fast everyone went on vacation. I mean, like we're just like, we're tired of this. They just like went on vacation, and so they're out on vacation, and bumping cars and bumping planes, and get all this stuff. And so be gentle with yourself. And so I guess
Yeah,
what I'm saying, Native Wellness Institute, or see if your motivation is out of love and gentleness for others and for yourself, because it's obvious that, yes, that was controlling. That was, I'm not gonna I'm not there yet, but I was gonna pray for the Supreme Court, but right now I want to give them vasectomies. So it's, I mean, but I was just thinking that gentleness, like when you were talking, Gene, we have to be gentle with ourselves and gentle with our families and gentle with the reactions. And it has that it's almost like a tenderness, because we're in a tender state, because we're transforming to something different. I just said to the sister from Canada, I said, I have a lot of I'm the go between when we're healing between couples, same sex and other couples. And when there's abuse, like when one hurts the other emotionally, spiritually, or physically, I mean, to hit them. And usually in abuse, then you have to decide, are you going to stay in that relationship? Is there going to be reconciliation? Because we have to leave room for that isn't so black and white. There's some gray areas of healing and reconciliation. And
Yeah.
so then that just makes me think, how do you reconcile with the Supreme Court? Well, we have a system. So you have to know that system, and you have to know that the reason this happened is there happened to be one man in charge that brought three of the people on the Supreme Court who may do other damage. One of the questions I got was, oh no, they're probably going to outlaw same-sex marriage. Oh no, they're gonna, like all of these human rights activity in the past 50 years, these human rights laws, and these indigenous human these good things that happen for us. We got that fear base is, okay, now they're gonna outlaw this and this. And I think we need to stop, because that is victimized thinking.
That's that. Yeah.
Yeah, so what do you think of that, Gene?
Well, that's that anticipatory grief, that anticipatory anxiety that we can create in ourselves too. Is that we it's not here yet, but we're like going, oh no, it's going to happen. It was like tragedy, the sky has fallen type added the thoughts, and those things again. But what can we do now? And like you said, we need to take a little bit of time, because we are in grief right now. We are in grief. And there's a lot of reaction out there as opposed to response. There's a lot of people responding, but a lot of it's just through action. You'll see, but taking care of yourself, what we need to do to take care of ourselves, step back a little bit and think about that. How am I going to respond to this? How can I support? How can I be an ally? What is my role? Each of us have our skills, gifts, and talent. I don't expect you to come online, speak to thousands of people like Theta and I, but just take care of your family. Maybe that's your role. Maybe it's your skills, gift, and talent. Maybe you're an artist. Some of you are artists. Some of you are song leaders. And I do want to point this out too, that although my dad didn't talk to me about that, but he showed me through example. And a lot of our Indian men are quiet like that, eh?
Mm-hmm.
They're quiet. They don't say much, but through their example of what they do in their community, how they treat their families, how they treat their wives or their daughters, their granddaughters, or their mothers and their grandmothers. They may not have the voice that says it, but their actions are showing volumes, and so there's about, we could talk about it, but then what's our action forward in that as well, and and so it's that's kind of what was on my mind as well, Theta, and that, and that's why I'm here too, is like, because I don't know, I didn't know what to do, so here I had to take.
Okay, so let me just, I don't want to tell you what to do, but I was just thinking, like where you live, go to the women's clinic, because I was going to go to our women's clinic right here, because I know the women are going to still come in, and they're still going to try to guide them to places that are safe places where they can be counseled and have an abortion. Give that clinic some resources, give them gas cards, get them a hotel, get them, even to give them a safe place where there's a sheltering of safe place while that person is making the decision. And it isn't like a woman just comes into the clinic and she just doesn't come in and said, oh, 5 minutes ago I just decided to have an abortion. We have to be gentle with where she comes from. And then when she walks out of that place, and I think that's where we can begin to take action to help. And it's even, if you go on your Instagram and say, hey, I'm an Indian man, and how can I help you? I mean, it's like just to even say that, because we were just saying, I just met with the Planned Parenthood of Montana, and they came here because they want to know what the tribes need. So we're building relationship, because
Mhm.
I said, you need to hang out and just listen. And she goes, I want to, because she said, I'm a white lady, but I'm an activist. I'm a white lady. And she goes, I just want to bring good health. And I go, I love you white people that are activists. And we hugged, we had a hug. And I go, we got to talk, because we have to figure out in this state how we can help not only the Indian women, but all of the BIPOC women, all of, the LGBTQ transgender. And so we started building relationships so we could set up something in Montana. And then so we started talking about it's different in the winter, it's different in the summer. And so I think that what we could do is begin to talk to each other. Or sorry, I'm in my mother's bedroom and I don't know all her gadgets. I told Mom, I said, Mom, I gotta go do the power. Go to my bedroom. I go, Mom, it's on Roe versus Wade. And she goes, boy, yeah, we got to do something about that, because anyway, so this action, say your prayers. There was our bundle holders, and I just said to one, I said, can you say some prayers about what we're supposed to do with Roe versus Wade? And you know what she said? I will do that tonight. So I think just collectively saying our prayers and the emotion around it. I mean, because like Gene, I'm like, I'm getting real close, because my heart is so charged. My heart is wounded with this. And then, but at the same time, my heart, I want to, I don't want to suck it up, but I want to gently help other sisterhood. And so I am going to my sisterhood, and which includes my mother here. And I guess, I'm in her sacred space. I feel like I'm invisibly surrounded by all my female ancestors. I feel like I'm secretly in my DNA. I have this epigenetic resiliency. I feel like, and taking that and then just helping every woman right now, if she is in that situation and she doesn't have that as an option, is that we figure out how we can help her have choice over her body, her sovereign body. So what do you think, Gene?
Um, right now I'm just thinking about what questions do we ask,
Mm.
and who do we ask for that support? Part of it too is like our Indian way. We're talking about our traditional way. The sacredness of the women. And the women. One of the sacredness of the women too is that when the men came back home after the long hunt or long fishing, and that hard work too, is that and I know this for myself, that when I need that shoulder to lie my head on, the weariness that I have, the lap that I have, the weariness that I have, whatever, that I know I can, that I have a safe place with Ruby, and just with the that sacredness of our women, our partners too, and the sacredness of when I was working with Nisqually, I would actually go out to the gravesite and I would talk, or sometimes I'd read grants. Should we have this grant? I would read it to Uncle Billy Frank. I would sit there and read it to him. I'd offer tobacco. I'd burn sage. For there's those things, or there's other, out there, Lami, or even our sacred sites there. I would sit there and I'd ask, because we need assistance and help and guidance in this. Because even during this time, I'm thinking about all of our elders who went through the experience before R.V. Wade, before 1973, before this, and the stories, like you said, listen to those stories, hear those stories. The boarding schools, we're hearing the stories of what happened to the boarding schools, and with Indian country, we know these stories, but at the same time, I'm listening to the story on Cooper's Island in British Columbia. And they called it the Alcatraz of the boarding schools, residential schools. And I thought I heard it all about the atrocities and the things that happened to Indian people in those schools. I thought I heard it all, and then I hear more of these stories. I keep hearing more of what's going on and stuff. Those, and this from the survivors of those boarding schools as well. But those stories of how the desperation women had during that time when abortions were not allowed, the desperations that they had. We need to hear those stories, because those elders, they know, they went through it, they lived through it, and hear that, so that doesn't happen again. Just like the boarding schools, residential schools, we can't let that happen again, and so part of it is, hearing those stories, taking the inventory, sitting back, finding what my role is, and and it's just yeah, that's my thought on it too. And even it's like, we talked about this earlier too, Theta, is like, when I came on, I heard you were on, and asked, if who can be on. And part of my thing is that okay, I'm driving here. I'm at a rest stop right now. I'm going to pull over here because I want to support Theta. I want to support my relative. I want to support her. And so it's like, so that's part of it as well. And sometimes it's not even just our voices are just, aren't going to be heard as men too, but how can I stand by? How can I hold space for our women too? How can I hold space there, that they know that they're supported, that they know that they're loved, that they know that they got the support of the men.
And and Gene, and that is just, how can we all hold space for each other right now? That sacred space, because it's comforting, because, and I just noticed, because I'm with about 300 people. We're meeting at this Eni encampment, but I just noticed how gentle the men were caretaking us. Like making sure everyone had rides, bringing them, do you want tea or coffee? They were actually just being tenderly generous, to all of the women. And so that holding that space. And so welcome everyone. We're with the Native Wellness Institute. We decided to take all of the emotions around Roe versus Wade and to start the dialogue of healing. And that's what today's topic is about. So welcome. And we've been, both Gene and I, because we always like to have different perspectives. And thank you, Gene, because when others couldn't get on, I just thought, oh, here I am, a woman left alone. No, I was just like, I know Gene's gonna get on. He might be in outer space. He's gonna pull over and get on Zoom. I know Gene is gonna have my back. And so that having each other's back and what I was going to say is, I noticed that there's just like this gentleness, like, people just came and just kind of, came, and coming from behind, on the Blackfeet, you better watch out. No, but they just came and they just said, "Hey, how you doing?" And
Yeah.
and then I just thought, wow, that's my rough brother over there, just butchered a buffalo, but he just kind of said, "Hey, how you doing?" But that check on women, check on your grandmas, check on their stories of what, because I've been noticing a lot of our women, they still need to do some healing because they might have had regrets over a decision. And so making some peace with having regrets of those decisions. So so right now, I guess my closing comments is, I'm going to still help women work on healing. I'm going to still work on my healing. I'm going to just make it a safe space because, my life partner is coming very soon, but shoot, we've been on the phone for 3 hours every day. Like, just like making plans for goodness. I mean, we're just like making plans for goodness, but he's been really supportive. I lost an animal, as you know, and it triggered all of my grief. And so this Roe versus Wade was just like, okay, and then my first reaction is, I wanted to cuss, but I just don't want to be in anger and hurt. I want to be in some gentle healing around it, just like I am with my grief. And so that communication with women is so important right now. So the way that I'm healing right now, I guess I could say, is every day I'm going to happy things. Every day I'm going to something that gives me joy. Every day I'm talking to people who love me. Every day I'm saying my prayers and giving it to Creator, Stapatapio. And today, for some reason I wanted to wear orange because every child matters. And I was before boarding school. The Jean, you brought it up because we still have a lot of healing to do with all those little children that we found. So cool. So this makes me feel good. So we got a lot of healing to do.
Got a lot of healing to do.
So,
Yeah. And again,
yeah.
yeah, again, as men, we got a lot of healing to do. And what is that healing? What's it look like? And and how can we? You said earlier about building relationships, with our women, building relationships with those healthcare facilities. Just as far as like building those relationships and building a healthy relationship, men, with ourselves. What is that relationship? And building the relationship with the children in your lives, building that good relationship with the women in your lives, the grandmas, that building a good relationship with your dog. Some of you have better relationships with your dog than you have with anybody else in the whole family. And so, and so how can we like take that, is that loving relationship? How can we build those relationships and build relationships with spirit? Take your shoes off, just walk on the earth and just simply say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just and I just want to say too, is like I gotta read this. Ruby said, she likes, her note too is like vote. Thoughtful action
Right on.
versus action without thought.
Exactly.
And green has become the color of abortion rights. That color too.
Well, thank you, Ruby. And I'm just so glad, one of I pulled this out because this is my homework. I started reading this again because I just always remember the message in this. One of the messages, the greatest weapon of the oppressor is the oppressed mind, and it's when people have been brainwashed. And then having been brainwashed myself in the past.
Yeah.
You know, because just for women, you know, like when I was a little girl, I got really confused because I was never going to look like a white Barbie, you know, and so then I threw that yoke off, you know, threw that yoke off and decided I was telling the women, I like my role because I'm enrolled. I love my brown, voluptuous body. I love who I am. And so I just say, that not being oppressed in my mind means being resilient and being liberated. Epigenetically, all the natives, all the tribes, you are so resilient. You are so powerful. So just grab your power, put your big panties on and go outside and do something, you know? And so I kind of have faith in that, Gene, you know, so like just kind of winding down here, you know, don't give them any more power.
Yeah.
Take your sovereignty from your personal to your village, to your reservation, to your rancheria, and take that power. You vote there and let your leadership talk with your leaders. Today I just said, I'm just going to visit with my leaders. We just elected 5 new leaders, and one's a woman, so it's cool. You know, and they're all young, they're all clean and sober, they all talking the language, they're all doing the ceremonies. And I would just say, I'm just going to go over and just talk to my leader and say,
Yeah.
what are we do? Yeah, what are we gonna do about this Roe versus Wade? You know, because there are leaders. You got to trust your leaders. We got to build relationship with our leaders. And so
Go to
I
that
guess,
relationship.
yeah.
You know,
So,
and the thing, you know, when 45 or like the you know, when that administration that came in, I asked some of our leaders too. It's like, okay, now what are we going to do now? And they said, hang on to what we have. You know, just hang on to what we already have. We can't lose what we have.
yeah.
You know, and so it's so, and we just, like you said, we've got to, you know, and learn more about the Dobbs decision, educate ourselves, you know, this whole thing. I mean, I need to get out there and do my homework.
Mhm, mhm.
I got to read up. I got to learn. I got to listen. I got to find out, what I still got to learn. We got to keep educating ourselves, you know,
Yes.
and so, yeah. And yeah,
So a way to keep educating yourself is Native Wellness Institute. We have on YouTube, we have close to 450 of these free power hours. And we also invite, we're at www.nativewellness.com. You can request anything. You can start to communicate with us. And, it's summertime. Let's celebrate. I might get ready to, go celebrate and go to the powwows and stuff, but educate, where talk to people. And that's all Gene and I are asking you in Native Wellness Institute, is to talk now and just say, what do we do now? What do we do now? And cool, Ruby, keep texting him.
I mean, she's
That's
yeah.
true. That's true communication. This is what you should say. Tick, tick, tick on the power hour. I love it.
Yeah, right here. She's like, she's been talking to me the whole time.
Oh, that is so cool. So thank you, Shannon. We just we're gonna say kitakito matsuno. We always say see you later, because we'll see you later. In many respects, many fronts. Native Wellness Institute is having our first conference on Bainbridge in September. So, stay tuned. The poster will be out soon. And so we'll see you later.
So thank you, everybody.
Do we go like this, Shannon?